Shalom from Israel. I would like to start by saying that our thoughts and prayers are with all those families that lost their loved ones in the tragedy that happened last week on Lag BaOmer in Meron. 45 people, fathers, grandfathers, sons, grandsons, died because of the terrible accident in Meron. And there are not words enough to express the mourning and the sadness that we feel as Am Israel. During all the 73 years of the present state of Israel, never happened such a big tragedy. And we're shocked. We're in shock. We cannot believe that it happened. And because today we're learning from Pirkei Avot, something that is written by Rav Akiva, and on Lag BaOmer we think about Rav Akiva because when a lot of his students died through a kind of a virus disease, there happened on the day of Lag BaOmer, happened the miracle that this disease, this virus stopped bringing death to all disciples. And we celebrate that on Lag BaOmer. But somehow, this Lag BaOmer turned differently. And for us and for all Am Israel, but especially for all those families that lost someone in that terrible day in Meron, my prayer is, and the prayer of Am Israel is, that Hashem may comfort them, and that the memory of those deceased loved ones may be a blessing to many. So let us return to the Mishnah. Last time we learned chapter 3:13 about what Rav Akiva wanted to say there, and now we're learning some other wisdom from Rav Akiva in 3:14. Hu haya omer, Chaviv Adam shenifra betzelem, hiba yetara noda'at lo shenifra betzelem, shene'emar ki betzelem Elohim asa et ha'adam. חביבים ישראל שנקראו בנים למקום חיבה יתרה נודעת להם שנקראו בנים למקום שנאמר בנים אתם לאלוהיכם. חביבים ישראל שנתן להם כלי חמדה. חיבה יתרה נודעת להם שנתן להם כלי חמדה, שבו נברא העולם, שנאמר, כי לכך טוב נתתי לכם תורתי, אל תעזובו. In English, it says, Rav Akiva, used to say, beloved is man, for he was created in the image of God. A greater love is that it was made known to man that he was created in the image of God, as it is stated, for in the image of God he made man. The second phrase, beloved is Israel, for they are children called children of the omnipresent. A greater love is that it was made known to them that they are called children of the omnipresent, as it is stated in the Torah, you are children to Hashem your God. And third, beloved is Israel, for a desirable utensil was given to them. A greater love is that it was made known to them that a desirable utensil with which the world was created was given to them, as it is stated, for I have given you a good teaching, do not forsake my Torah. Beloved is man, for he was created in the image of God. Hashem created heaven and earth. And after he created all the animals, he created another species, mankind. But only mankind was chosen to bear the image of God. Tselem, it says in Ivrit, in Hebrew. So what does it mean that Hashem made us in his image? And what special is it that Hashem chose to do so? And what is the love of God for man? Well, we can derive already that if Hashem loved us so much that he made us in his image, that it also, this honor carries implicit within it the commitment for us, the obligation to carry out his will. Who has to carry out his will? Well, we talk about all mankind. God created mankind in his image. So all the nations can carry out and must carry out the will of Hashem by following the 7 Noahide laws. And the Jewish nation, the Jews, we have to keep the commandments of the Torah. Just only already because Hashem created us, mankind, in his image, we owe it to him to carry out his will. So that God created us in his image does not mean that we physically look like God, because Hashem does not have a body. He is not physical. He is not a form. Yes, in Torah, in Tanakh, we talk about the hand of Hashem, the face of Hashem, the foot of Hashem, and we use all such kinds of words to describe Hashem. But actually, we are not describing Hashem. We describe an idea of who Hashem is, but we do it in words that we can understand. But those words do not capture who God is, because God has no body, and he is much greater and much more than that we can comprehend and that we can capture in our words. But we use those words so that we can understand something of Hashem. So God is not physical, and he made us not physical. So Rav Akiva says it means that man is endowed, is given, is blessed with some sort of godly attribute which sets us apart from all the other creatures in creation, that we have an advanced intellectual capacity to comprehend. Shlomo HaMelech also notices a difference between men and animals. He says, all die. There's no difference. And although we cannot see, because both animal and man turn back to dust when they're dead, when they are buried, the difference is that the soul of Hashem, of the soul of mankind returns to Hashem, and the life that was in the animal returns to the earth. So there is a difference. And we have a soul that can communicate with Hashem. That our soul was born in the presence of Hashem before our soul entered our body, before we were born. So we are made in the idea that Hashem had of what we had to be and must be. In Derech Chaim, there's actually the opposite written. I mean the opposite, that we were not made in His image, but we were. Derech Chaim said, yes, we were made in His image. But how can we be made in His image if God doesn't have an image? He doesn't have a body. He doesn't have form. Well, in Derech Chaim is it explained that we are the physical representation of godliness. So all those character traits, all those different parts of who Hashem is, translated into a physical form, that became man. And of course, we are not God, and we do not present ourselves as God or as a part of God, but we are His ambassadors. We represent God on earth. So somehow, how we think, how we talk, how we can connect with Hashem represents who Hashem is. That's why it is important that we live our lives in the will of God. There were other creatures that were also created, and they also possessed intellect, like we humans do, namely the angels. The difference, however, between angels and mankind is that angels don't have a will to choose between right or wrong, evil or good. Angels don't have a free choice. They must do and want to do only the will of Hashem. And they have metaphysical bodies. They don't have bodies like us. They can present themselves as if they were human, but that is just so that we can meet them or get a message from them, like we see in Torah and Tanakh. But their actual body is not like us. They're metaphysical. They're supernatural creatures created by Hashem, spiritual creatures. But we have both. We are spiritual creatures by the soul that Hashem blew in us. He blew life in our nostrils, but not life, just a beating heart, but He gave us the personality we are, the, the real you, the real me that we are. The inner part of us that can connect with Hashem. So we are all children of Hashem and all made in His image, and we are all meant in all the world to do the will of God. We owe it to Him to do His will. The difference is that all the nations of the world do not fulfill His will. In general speaking, do not fulfill the will. That happened already in the time of Noah, where all the people were doing their own thing and not listening anymore to the God of creation. There was only one guy, one family that was noticed by Hashem, that still was favorable in His eyes. That was Noah, his wife, and his sons, and their wives. Very terrible. And again, we are in a situation where most of the world is not busy with doing the will of God, but they're busy in general with doing what they want themselves. He chose the Jews, He chose Israel to do the Torah, to follow Torah, to represent Hashem by doing Torah, being an example to the rest of the world. And we still have that responsibility to do so. That's why we learn together to fix our characters, to make sure that day in, day out, we become better persons, more and more in the image of God, or in the image that God has intended us to be. So we are created in His image, but Rav Akiva said, greater is that Hashem made known to us that we were created in His image. So He wants us to be aware of it, that we are created in His image. And if we only, as human race, could realize that we all are created in His image, I think if we all would understand that we would be different persons, or want to become different persons. And that man's being created in God's image constitute an obligation to do as well. That's what we talked about already. But somehow it didn't work out completely. But again, today we have the possibility, Jew and non-Jew, you who are listening to these studies, work on your character. Be a representative of Hashem for yourself, for Hashem, and to others. And the instructions He gave are written in the Torah. In the Torah is not only the Torah is not only accessible for Jews. Torah is accessible now today for all the people of the world, in all the languages of the world. And if you would read it, then you would come across those words where Hashem tells us, human race, listen up, you are created in the image of Hashem, Elokeinu, the creator of the world. Do something with it. You are created. as he intended to, as somehow being not physically like Hashem, but spiritually in the likeness of him. Tselem, representers of Hashem. Beloved is Israel, for they are called children of the Omnipresent. That's the second one, the second phrase. Just it is natural for a father to feel a closer connection to his children than to his servants. God, who has all mankind at his service, chose the Jews to be his children. So we are all created in his image. We are all created by Hashem. And he loves all mankind. But there is one nation that he chose to be his children, to be his priests, his Kohanim, to carry out the mitzvot of Torah, and to be a light unto the nations. So that's why, just as a king gives a higher level, has a higher level of closeness to his children than to his servants, so Hashem chose to have a higher level, a closer level, higher is the wrong word I think, but a closer level of, more intense level of closeness Am Israel has with Hashem than the other nations. But we, as Am Israel, have the obligation to share that blessing with the nations. Let us take a short break, and after the break, we continue. We're back from the break. Let's continue. We just did, beloved is Israel, for they are called children of the Omnipresent. And we're continuing with, beloved is Israel, for a desirable utensil was given to them. What was this desirable utensil? Of course, the Torah. God desired to confer merit upon Israel, to increase their reward for mitzvah observance. By giving us the Torah, he showed us his love. The Torah is referred as a desirable utensil. It is based on the verse we read in Tehillim 19, verse 11, that the words of Torah are desirable, more desirable than gold, than even much fine gold. It is also, the Torah is also a great tool, a great utensil used by Hashem himself to create the world. How do we learn that Hashem used the Torah to create the world? As we can learn from the Mishnah, we can read that example, for example, in Proverbs 8:30, the Torah was then, when before creation, his nursling. Let's see if I could. Which in Bereshit Rabbah is explained as, the Torah itself declares that it was the tool used by God in creating the world. For the opening verse of the Torah can be read with Reshit in it. So the first words of the Torah, Bereshit bara, Genesis in English, But the word Bereshit, within it, there is written Reshit. And Reshit is also a synonym used for Torah. So it can be read as with Reshit, with Torah. God created the heavens and the earth. You can read it. Read Bereshit 1, verse 1. Bereshit bara. It is also, like in Proverbs 8:22, Hashem made the Torah as its beginning. So he made the beginning through the Torah, but he also made Torah the beginning. So before creation was Torah, and with Torah he began creating earth. So Hashem chose Am Israel to fulfill the mitzvot of the Torah. They are the primary executors of what is written in this Torah. And we must be certainly beloved by Hashem that he chose us for this very, very responsible task. And it must also, we must feel special and beloved, but also we must feel the responsibility. If Hashem chooses to give one nation his Torah, while he made all mankind, and while Torah is accessible to every one of us in all the earth, still he chose one group to share this love of Torah, to learn about it, to study it, and to share it with whoever wants to. Like you today, learning with me. We're learning together about this. So this is the moment that you are enjoying, that you are receiving the blessings that come through the study of Torah. A greater love is that it was made known to them that a desirable utensil with which the world was created was given to them, because it says in Proverbs 4:2, "For I have given you a good teaching, do not forsake my Torah." So there's also a warning, because Hashem loved us so much, he wants us to be aware of the possibilities to close ourselves off, to turn us away from Torah and from Hashem. He gave us the will to choose not to do so. He gave us the will to choose the Yetzet Tov, to choose the good, the Tov. And the Torah is a good teaching. And it brings us only good, it brings us blessings. So we have to fight our Yetzer Hara. We have to fight our bad character traits that lead us astray into sin. And we have to learn to follow the good teachings of Hashem, and to work on our characters. So in the creation, we just explained that creation and Torah are interconnected with each other. In the creation, Hashem speaks of every day when he created, and he said he saw that it was good. He used the word good, tov. Hashem used the word good in physical things. When he created physical things, he said it was good. About Torah, he said it is, one time he says a good teaching, but on another spot he says it is a desirable utensil. Desirable is we don't use for things or persons, but we use desirable for a concept. And Torah is not only a physical book. The teachings are not only just good rules to live by, but the concept of Torah is that it gives us life. It's a tree of life, it says. Those who really want it grasp for it. They stretch out to Torah to find, to desire, to want the life that is in it. And it will bring you life. However, one should not misconstrue the sense of closeness to God one feels when he faithfully keeps the commandments as an accurate reflection or reciprocation of the love God feels for him. So, by doing Torah, by following the mitzvot, and the good, wonderful feeling of love we get by doing so is not exactly what God's love and what God's intentions and what God his desires are for us, because we can only understand a little of who is God. We can only feel and experience a little about the love of God. Everything that we experience and that we feel and that we know and that we learn, it's all small in comparison to who Hashem really is. I think if we multiply our imagination of how big God is with 1,000,000, then he would still be greater. Take for example that we are sending for decades already rockets to space, to the moon, even to Mars. And they send there the kind of a small car that drives around on Mars and that makes pictures. But we have never been there. We have never seen it. We just see the frames of the photographs, the pictures that the Mars rover sends back to Earth. And by those pictures, we try to understand and we try to capture what life on Mars is. Well, there is still no life on Mars, but we found a lot of dust and rocks and sand, weather conditions, warmth, cold, and also recently we discovered ice on Mars. But did we discover ice or Mars on Mars or all the things I just said? No, it's the machine we send to Mars, for which we believe it is accurate, that sends us the pictures with the information of what I just told you. And those pictures give us an idea of what Mars is like, but Mars is much bigger and much different when we would really be there. And that is what is with Hashem. The words we have and the Torah he gave us sketches a picture, a frame of the love of Hashem for us. And we look at the frame and we try to understand what is in the frame. But Hashem is much bigger than the frame he gave us. He is much bigger than the picture he gave us to look at. And the picture is always just a moment captured on a photo. It's not a time, it's not a feeling, it's not an emotion. It's one moment in time captured on a piece of paper. And that's what we see. We see moments captured on a piece of paper within the boundaries of which we can understand within the frame But what is outside of that frame, we just can try to think about, but we really don't know. That's what Hashem is. He is what we see within the frame is just a fraction and momentum of who Hashem is. But He is everything and more that is without the frame. I wish I had a picture here. That would be nice. Okay. I hope you understand what I'm trying to explain, to express. So, for a human being's perception of closeness to God is feeble. It's not really what it is. It's incomplete. At the same time, one must not lament what he perceives as a great spiritual distance separating him from God. So, what we just talked about, the difference between who Hashem and His love really is, and what we just understand. Don't let that make you depressed, because it is what it is. And finally, in the afterlife, we will more understand who He is. But for now, we just have to do it with what we understand, and just let us be happy about it. That we already are able to understand during our lifetime a little of who Hashem really is. God exhibits an intense love for every Jew. The proper attitude lies somewhere between self-righteousness and despair, and the question we must ask ourselves is not, will I ever attain closeness to God, but how will I attain closeness to God? Because it is a practice. It is a process of a lifetime. How will I attain closeness, and then start living by the how? Because why? Well, it is within every Jew's reach. Like Hashem says, that Torah is within our reach. It's not in heaven. It's not across the ocean. Torah is in our hands. And in and with the Torah, Hashem reveals to us His love for Am Israel as His children, and for the world as His creation, for the nations as His servants. And let's just use every day of our life to come closer and to understand more of who Hashem is. If we understand that every human being is created in the image of God, we would think twice or more before, for example, robbing another person. If we just would understand that we all are creation of Hashem, and that He loves us, we do not want to hurt somebody else. It's the moment that we forget the connection with Hashem. It's the moment that we forget that the person across the table or across the room is just as ourselves, a creation of Hashem. The moment we forget that, we get self-centered. Then you have humanism. Humanism, the ideology of humanism is the human-centered view of the world. The world is not human-centered. The world is God, Hashem-centered. And if we see that all around Hashem is His creation and is interconnected, then we would only love each other and never would want to hurt each other. So in short, every human being is created in the image of God. Thereby, think twice before we want to hurt or damage somebody else. 2. Jews are the children of God, just as children entering this world are endowed with a spiritual component from on high, a soul unsullied and pure. We must ensure that their physical component, contributed by men and women, is conceived with the most sanctity. And 3. We were given a gift of immeasurable value, the Torah. We would do poorly to reject this treasure by accepting false gods. Let us Jew and non-Jew, let us love each other, respect each other, each in one's role in this world, and learn from Torah together. Okay. For now, Toda Rabba. Thank you for learning together. Litraot. Bye-bye. Shabbat Shalom. And hopefully next week when we are going to continue with chapter 3, paragraph 15. And I think we will also do 16. So, and Bezrat Hashem, I hope we will be able to finish chapter 3 before Shavuot, so that we then will start in the next Omer counting with chapter 4. Okay, litrot, bye-bye.